Our panel, Dina, attorney and legal analyst with Midas Touch on the left, and on the right, John Ziegler, host of the Death of Journalism podcast. Welcome back, both of you. John, you talk a lot about 2020 and COVID. Why does COVID and 2020 matter in 2026?
Because this was the most important thing that's happened in the modern history of America, at least since World War II. And I think a lot of mistakes were made. I think it's incredibly important to understand why those mistakes were made and what I think was mostly a moral panic. Let's be clear, the pandemic was real, it was terrible. A lot of people lost their lives. But there were some decisions made, specifically by Dr. Fauci, that I don't believe hold up under scrutiny. And this diary is astonishing. This is, to me, is far more significant than the Epstein files ever possibly could have been. Yet the media coverage of the Epstein files is 1,000 times more than what we've seen so far on this. I'm not that interested in the lab leak theory, which I know Rand Paul is going to get into with Fauci tomorrow. I'm way more...
This idea, the lab leak theory, is that maybe Fauci was ordering some testing,
right,
and then maybe America helped to engineer COVID, which Fauci says isn't true.
I'm way more interested in what we did here in America. As the father of 2 young daughters who had their lives largely destroyed for 2 years in decision-making that I think was ill-advised and had no backing, I want to know how and why those decisions were made. And we've already learned from these diaries that Dr. Fauci lied publicly about who was behind the shutdowns here in California and New York. He bragged about those. He lied about data, including the death rate. He lied about all sorts of things. But here's the part that I think is most significant, and what I think your viewers need to understand most. This was a man obsessed with his own celebrity. It is off the charts in these diary entries. And why does that matter? Because when you want to be loved, especially by the liberal elites, it is going to impact your decision making because you want to maintain that love. You want the pandemic to go on as long as possible because it is the greatest thing that has ever happened to you. And when you flip on masks, as Fauci did in February of 2020 to May in 2020, he did so because his fan base, the liberal elites, demanded that he do so because it was a virtue signal for anti-Trump supporters. And my children had to wear masks uselessly for 2 years and missed school because of those decisions.
Dina, there's a lot to get into there.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack. First, I think it's a mischaracterization of his diary significantly. I do not think he lied. I do not think he was obsessed with celebrity from what I've read with the diary. But also,
he did talk a lot about the media and media appearances and all the rest.
It was a personal diary. He was detailing his life, which included celebrity interactions. But the fact is, I mean, I also know somebody who died in his young 30s. We all do.
And
that's
I'm sorry,
the point.
none of the mitigations helped that.
The fact of the matter is,
we don't
they
know that.
did help
we don't
that.
know that.
They did help that
more. Yeah, we do. They died.
It was difficult.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It didn't. I mean, my point is that other people may have died of some.
It prevented deaths. This was a man in his young 30s. He left behind a baby and a young wife, and we would have had a lot more deaths if Fauci and others had not closed it down. Was there ramifications with closing it down? Of course. It was a lose-lose situation. The fact of the matter is, I remember sitting and watching and hearing Trump as president talking about bleach, and people were grateful that Dr. Fauci, who was a renowned physician, head of the NIH for years, was able to calm us and provide us with guidance. But the fact of the matter, this hearing isn't really about did they make the right decisions or not, which honestly could be litigated about forever. It is this vindictive retribution, which is the entire Trump MAGA regime. It's all about retribution. And Fauci has gone, he's had harassment, he's had death threats for just trying to be a public servant and honestly doing the best he could.
Well, Joe Biden was concerned that Anthony Fauci would be prosecuted by the Trump administration, so he pardoned him for everything that he had done previously. And now some of that could change. So this is a quote from CNN.com. Paul could attempt to renew calls for perjury charges based on the scientist's remarks in Wednesday's hearing. If he lies during the hearing, that's a new lie, and the pardon won't cover that. And so that's what he told Fox Business. Do you think this is like a perjury trap?
Yeah, look, perjury is purposely very difficult to prove. I'm not one of these people that says Fauci should be in jail. A lot of conservatives believe that. I want accountability for wrong decisions.
What does that look like?
I want him to admit he was wrong about things. He admits so in his diary, if you use basic logic, because he either lied in his diary or he lied in his public statements. You can't do both. He was wrong about a lot, and we need to learn from the past so that if anything like this ever happens again, we don't make the same mistakes. We devastated our education system, our economy, and we did all sorts of things that I believe we're going to rue for years and years. I just want the truth. I just want some accountability.
I mean, if Rand Paul wants to know why Trump messed up the handling of COVID, he can. This should not all be on Fauci's step. And
is it possible that both of them screwed up?
Yes.
Well, but where's the Republican Party asking
screwed
for
up,
Trump?
and other people screwed up.
Trump was
and
president.
That there was an overreaction, and shutting down beaches didn't make any sense. And why don't we admit some of that stuff now, so that way we can move forward and talk about this logically, so we can avoid this sort of things. And both parties made mistakes in this whole thing because there was mass panic and overreaction. But you also understand that because people didn't want to have deaths on their hands, and you understand how some of the people responded to that. Okay, let's talk about what's happening.
Wow, that was awesome.
With ICE right now. There is some new CNN.com reporting about this idea